Unfortunately, I have no direct control of what I'm doing. I'll have to say, next. We have titled this State of Capture. In other words, it is the state of the capturing environment. Remember that I said we research to understand the state of the question. So in this case, it is the state of the capture. It is much more than corruption. We've opened again with Mandela's statement, but focusing on the first part, transparent and accountable, government not to be part of the problem. The next slide, the power elite anchored at the top. You can't get better than that because you've got a total vantage position. And the president says last year, July, if it were up to me and I made the rules, I would ask for just 6 months as dictator. You would see wonders. South Africa would be straight. That's why if you give me 6 months and allow Zuma to be a dictator, you would be amazed. Absolutely. Everything would be straight. Right now, to make a decision, you need to consult, you need a resolution, you need decision, collective, it's a lot of work. And so, with that in the backdrop, you look at the 7 ways in which this power elite that is anchored around the president undermines the state. These are the same things I've already read to you. So I'm going to go on to the next slide that talks about, it deals with the first 2 of those 7, the first 2, capturing the state-owned companies and weeding out skilled professionals. President Zuma comes to office in April, actually May, whatever that month was, in 2009. I've been corrected, it should not be state president. I still have this, I must remove it. Because we no longer have a state president in the Republic in terms of our constitution. Apology. Then you see what happens. Within a year, in October 2010, Barbara Hogan is shuffled out. In those days, there used to be almost a reshuffle almost every year. Shuffled out of office, apparently for refusing a presidential interference in a state-owned company, board appointments. Feki Mentor the same year is called, so she says, to a meeting at the Gupta Saxon World residence, and she doesn't get lost and is offered a position, public enterprise ministry, that provided she drops the SAA flight route to Mumbai, and she refuses. Same year, Minister Kugaba is appointed Public Enterprises Minister, and he makes a number of changes on the board. At ESCOM, huge changes at ESCOM. Nazia Karim, wife of Muhammad Hussein, family member of the Gupta Business Associate Salim Essa. Romeo Kumalo, co-director with Essa in a company. Mark Pamensky, former director in Gupta company, Oak Bay. Mariam Kasim previously worked for Gupta company, Sahara. Ben Gubane was in business with Essa. Kuben Mutli in business with Pamensky and advises Gupta aligned minister, so we know, Musebenzi Zwane. And so on it goes. These are the changes that are made in 2010. Then, of course, Transnet, same thing is happening. Iqbal Sharma becomes a member of the board. And I won't go into all those because they're just detail of just to illustrate. This is how the capturing actually happens. That a minister comes in, changes happen, then you get a big proposal of a major deal, and then it is managed in an opaque manner. That's really the kind of modus operandi. 2011, Minister Kigaba appoints Brian Molefe, CEO of Transnet. There is a report that this was predicted by a knowledgeable source 3 months before it happened, and it was published as such. And of course, the CFO is also appointed Anuj Singh, and they proceed to sign off huge deals. In the next slide, you will see these. President Zuma then appoints Minister Lynn Brown, Public Enterprises, and she brings changes to Danel, the Danel board, including Mr. Mutseki, who owns a stake in the Gupta uranium mine Shiva, and Dan Mancha, who was advisor to Mr. Zuma and to Minister Mutambi. 2015, President Zuma appoints Mr. Mzwane into the position of Mines Minister. And it is reported that at the same time, Minister Brown appoints Brian Millif as ESCOM CEO. And again, he comes along with Anuj Singh to be CFO in this environment as well. SABC Jonas in October, the very next month, as part of the scheme, is offered this huge opportunity. Hey, yazi SABC imali engaka. What? You ingathi yanuka wayiyeka le mali. December, the same year, this is a very busy year, 2015. The President fires Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene reportedly hours after he presented to Cabinet on the unaffordability of the nuclear power and replaces him with Minister Van Rooyen, who arrives flanked by two advisors, Ian Whately, Ms. Jessie Duarte's son-in-law, and Mohamed Bobat, former Gupta employee, but he is forced to reverse the decision. Okay. I'm being educated. Thank you. I'll try. Now, of course, enter Pravin Gordhan. I should say that the Council of Churches approached the President at the time when Mr. Nene was removed. We wrote, especially in terms of our South Africa we pray for, focusing on the poverty and inequality aspect, because we recognized the huge impact that this would have even on the pension funds that elderly people are now relying on. And so these were issues that were raised, and the President agreed with us that these are matters of concern. But then in 2017, the President had another wholesale cabinet reshuffle, which we all know about. And I don't want to spend too much time on this. It is just to illustrate the issues. But then the effect is that every time these changes happen, a lot of institutional memory is lost with the people that depart as a result of the uncomfortable manner in which the changes have been done. I can say that the only time we ever had a very good transition was from the Nationalist Party to the African National Congress. It was the best transition. Because the intention was to keep as much of the knowledge and information. We believed we didn't know enough, so please don't go too fast. Let's collect what we can. But since then, everything that we gathered then, we throw away. Now, between 2012 and 2019, Transnet announced that it would spend 300 billion rand improving its aging rail network. That's a huge pot. Now, Minister Kigaba moves Iqbal Sharma, who is a business associate of the Guptas, to the Transnet board. Same year, December, this is when the report was made about Brian Millif is about to move. And he did go. Then Minister Kigaba appoints Mr. Sharma in the Special Board Tender Committee and makes him chair of this, which has got something like minimum of 2.5 billion and above to spend. In 2013, Transnet announces 50 billion rand locomotive tender. They appoint McKinsey to advise on deal structure. and funding. McKinsey agrees to subcontract part of the work to regiments, after which the original fixed contract balloons from 35 to 100 million, signed off by Mr. Mulefe and Mr. Singh. 2014, 1 month before the tender is awarded to 4 train builders, Mr. Sharma, who had adjudicated the process, together with Mr. Gupta and Mr. Zuma, acquire a stake in VR Laser Lab Services via VR Laser Property, an engineering firm that is positioned to benefit from the Transnet local tender through the supply chain process. March 2014, Transnet awards that 50 billion tender, seemingly in a bid to gain access to the lucrative regiments. Regiments had given a proper contract, but somebody wanted that contract, and so they tried to buy regiments. And when that didn't work, they buy Trillion, and then try to get that business away from the company that already had it into this other one, with the help of someone who was at regiments by the name of Eric Wood. And the troubles move and get established at Trillion. And ultimately, Trillion gets comfortable with an amount of money for work that really had not been done, apparently, because the work belonged to another company. Now, we learn that Regiments is not a Gupta company, not a Gupta-linked company, but that Trillion is a Gupta-linked company. That's what we have learned. As a result of this, there is litigation where the Regiments is litigating against Trillion and Mr. Wood on this matter. Now, evidence has also emerged of how these proceeds of these contracts have been spirited out of the country through various Gupta-linked shell companies. And the chairman of Trillion, Mr. Tokyo Sokhwale, launched an investigation, or so we tried to do that, but it didn't seem to work. There is an untold story of the amount of money that actually leaves our shores in these processes through foreign-based shell companies, Hong Kong, Dubai, all over the place. And we do not even know the impact of this on the fiscus in terms of losses of tax revenues. In 2015, Public Enterprises Minister Lindban overhauls the Denel board. We've already dealt with that. But what's interesting here is that the Minister of Finance at the time decided to put a halt, brakes into this because it did not meet with the PFMA. It seems that the purpose of the Denel deal was to give these nexus of companies access to intellectual property of this really belongs to the state. I mean, if Denel is South Africa's anchor of military information and all the technology that is developed. So if you actually spirit that out to a Hong Kong company, then we have a problem. I won't go to the reshuffle. We recognize that there's a serious shakedown process where some government ministers, act in concert with private interests and use regulatory instruments or policy decisions in an arbitrary manner to shake down incumbent businesses, including black businesses, indeed, and favor particular interests. And instead of prioritizing job creation and economic growth, decisions are taken for the benefit of a particular company or group. The case that's been covered in the Public Prosecutor's report of Minister Zwane is of interest. And he made the statement, we are clear that if companies cannot mine safely, they should not be mining at all and should allow other potential holders who respect the laws of the country to continue mining. Now, therefore, they use health and safety law, for example, as well as other mechanisms, which they do not apply equally to everyone. The case of the coal mining of Idwala mining in Mpumalanga, where we can go on and on about this. It's really just to illustrate. There are a number of them. I don't think I want to go into everything that is here. But I would like to go quickly to the Tegeta Optimum case, which is a fascinating case. 2013, Glencore, which owns Optimum Holdings, writes to Eskom because they are losing nearly 1 billion rand per year based on their 1993 coal supply contract of 150 rand per ton. They invoke the hardship clause. Business people understand this. I'm only just learning about it. That's the businesses have got hardship clauses. I wish I had one of those for my household. Which means that Optimum and Eskom could enter into negotiations if either party felt that the coal supply contract was no longer in their best interest. 2014, this started in 2013. In 2014, they signed a cooperation agreement which paves the way for a new coal supply contract to stop those losses. You know, we're working with each other here, we're getting somewhere. 2015, Mr. Molefe becomes the acting CEO in April. First thing he does in May is to meet with Optimum and say, no more negotiations. You're not going to get away with it. You will pay, you will stay with the 1993 contract, which then, of course, means that they can't cope, because that's why they started the conversation. And therefore, jobs get lost. 2015, the same year, 4 important things happened. The first one is that Glencore negotiates, please, 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 can we pay 300 rand then, just double what we were paying until 2018, and then from then on, we pay 570. Instead of considering this request, Eskom imposes a fine of 2.1 billion on Glencore for supplying poor quality coal. Oh, this coal was poor quality all along. We didn't realize it. But the same coal, the same month, that very same month, another mine that was producing worse coal, their suspension was lifted. That was the Brakfontein mine that I didn't go to. KPMG approaches Glencore with an offer from an anonymous client, which turns out to be the Gupta companies, to buy the same company, the same mine that is producing poor quality coal, according to Eskom. And that they want to buy it for 2 billion. Optimum says no. So what happens? They get punished, and that's all 2015, and they call for business rescue. I have somebody here who taught me about business rescue. They called for business rescue. At that point, this is in August, Minister Zwane travels to Switzerland, so the report says, to meet with Glencore. That is in the state capture report. And in that very same time, am I doing better? I'm not. Now, who are in this meeting? These are the anonymous buyers. And of course, eventually, the offer has to be accepted. Now, in her report, the public protector of the time reports, it is potentially unlawful for the minister to use his official position of authority to unfairly and unduly influence a contract for a friend, or in this instance, his boss's son, at the expense of the state. This scenario would be further complicated if his actions were sanctioned by the president. We move away from, these are just examples of how state-owned companies actually get cannibalized. Then there is the securing control over the country's fiscal sovereignty and securing control over the strategic procurement opportunities by intentionally weakening key technical institutions. Momentous national decisions are taken on the basis of ad hoc political judgments without prior consideration of the legal, financial, economic, and all other public policy implications. Where technical opinions contradict the plans of vested interests, they are actively suppressed or excluded from consideration. Processes are constructed in a manner that avoids deliberation on the basic facts and critical evidence. It is not surprising, therefore, that whenever they are taken to court, they lose because they are inappropriate from the beginning. Now, despite mounting national debt and slowing economic growth, intense pressure is placed on the national treasury to fund ill-considered political projects or issue sovereign guarantees that will bind the country to foreign debt for years to come. Now, sovereign guarantees really is where there is no money in the budget to buy a service or to build a project. We go to another country that's going to do the project like nuclear. Come and do it. We don't quite have the money now, but you know what? The government that we represent will always raise money, and in future they'll keep paying. That's a guarantee, pledging on the sovereignty of the country. Now, guarantees are favored because they enable the executive to collateralize the country while bypassing parliamentary approval. Often it is argued that these large projects are going to be financed by China or Russia. All that is required is just a guarantee. Not much, just a guarantee. What is not explained is that these projects establish permanent obligations to foreign nations without the democratic and transparent scrutiny of Parliament. Hence, if you have an irresponsible national treasury, and I'm not saying that we do, pursuing narrow interests, consequences will be catastrophic for the nation. It's kind of like somebody saying, I want to buy that coat the winter is setting in, they have it at Edgar's, but I don't have the money, and I don't have a job, and they will not believe me if I say I'll pay. Can you stand in for me and sign? And of course, I come along and sign. And the person, of course, doesn't pay. Who then has to pay? That's what we're doing with these guarantees. So we did this with nuclear. There's a whole story of why this is interesting. Because in 2010, the Guptas and Duduzane Zuma buy the uranium-1 Dominion mine, which is later called the Shiva Uranium, with a loan from the IDC, Industrial Development Corporation. In 2011, Cabinet gets to approve there's a story about that purchase. The price they paid is somewhere around 37 million. I know I don't read the numbers very well, but that one was about $37 million. And it was apparently much higher than it should have been for something that was not providing anything, unless you know there's going to be a project in the future that's going to pay up. So 2011, a year later, the Cabinet approves the Integrated Resource Plan from the 20-year plan from 2010 to 2030, which allows for a mix of the country's electricity generation, providing also for nuclear, but not as a priority. And then 2011, same year, the President establishes an interministerial National Nuclear Executive Committee. I understand this was chaired by the Deputy President at the time, Kgalema Motlanthe. 2014, the contract of the DG of Energy, who had great experience, a woman by the name of Nelisiwe Magubane. She's absolutely outstanding in her career. Her contract was not renewed. So there was almost a year when there was no Tabane Zulu gets appointed, who comes from human settlements with no experience at all in the energy environment. Think about weeding out knowledgeable professionals and putting people that are going to be totally dependent because they don't really know any different. They're just happy to have the job. 2015, several things happened. Minister Nene and Minister Jomat Peterson accompanied the president to BRICS in Russia. The story goes, and it's an amazing story, that the Minister of Finance is presented with a letter that is supposed to be his letter to sign guarantees on the nuclear project in Russia. I would like to believe that the letter was actually drafted in his office before he left. Now, Minister Nene does not sign. So a joint National Treasury Energy Task Team established to take nuclear bill program forward compiles a detailed preliminary report that models the fiscal and financial implications of nuclear. This report does not seem to have served before cabinet or any government structure. Instead, the same year, I hesitate to say this, the same year, on the 9th of December 2015, there is a discussion in cabinet about nuclear, and Minister Nene presents what he says is the unfeasibility of nuclear. But in the same cabinet meeting, something else is presented that says we should go forward. And the one that says we should go forward is accepted, and Minister Nene loses his job later that day. 2017, Department of Energy transfers procurement to ESCOM, where it's going to be babysat, presumably, by the appropriate people. And then they start releasing an RFI at ESCOM. The rest is history. Then there is a whole story that we know of the various linkages and the dots that get connected with regards to the intelligence and security apparatus. I don't have the time to go into all that now, but it's very evident every time you read the newspaper. I want to go to the last part, the last slide. There appears to be a concerted effort to undermine collective political institutions in the executive, including cabinet. It appears that critical decisions are delegated to hand-picked groups massed in interministerial committees that are able to function in an unaccountable manner. Now, this reminds me of the Security Council of President P.F. Botha, which did not have to report to cabinet about everything unless the president felt this must be shared. And of course, Botha had a justification that he called total strategy against the total onslaught. Our total strategy and our total onslaught remain below the surface. The Interministerial Committee on Banks, for example, which was an interesting one, which was chaired by Minister Zwane, there was a report that a cabinet has decided this must be done, and it turned out that there was no such a cabinet decision. So there must have been another committee elsewhere that made that decision. The president is now chairing the Interministerial Committee on Communication, which is unusual, and is also chairing the Interministerial Committee on Nuclear, which he took over from Deputy President Mutlante when he was still in office. The nature of IMCs, this is why this is important, is in that in and of themselves, even though they are legal and legitimate, they do not report to Parliament. Ministers individually report. So if you want to make decisions that don't have to easily get to, you just have them in the interministerial, because no single person takes responsibility to Parliament over these things. In essence, therefore, we must ask the question whether Cabinet is still able to function as a forum for honest deliberation on matters of public policy. And it is with that I ask the question of what then is the appropriate response. What I've just given to you is part of a large research project that is to go public, and within which we have identified the elements on which we shall pronounce on the basis of our gospel values. In the 1980s, we had to examine theologically the presumed legitimacy of the apartheid government, from which we went on to examine the theology of the just war in the context of the justness of the war of liberation, waged by the liberation movement against an illegitimate apartheid government. It was a very difficult debate in our churches, Now, the questions before us are: what theological instruments should we use to determine how and at what point the church should withdraw its recognition of the moral legitimacy of a democratically elected government? At what point should the church, what instruments should we use to determine at what point the church should withdraw its recognition of the moral legitimacy of a democratically elected government? And what does that mean? It seems sufficiently clear to us that the government of the day has lost the moral radar that should inform the public service of Batubili in a people-first governmental culture. Its operations seem to be driven by an outside interest, strategically located at the top of the executive, in order to periodically raid the various attractive units of the state, of which a legitimate government should be a steward. What we see persuades us that the present government has lost moral legitimacy. The question that this has raised is in the constitutional dimension. Does the conduct of the government render it to have violated its constitutional mandate? That is a matter for the lawyers, I suppose, to explore further. The lawyers will examine whether the government is not in breach of Section 41 of the Constitution in Chapter 3 on the principles of cooperative government and intergovernmental relations. 3 subsections of Section 41 say that all organs of state must secure the well-being of the people of the Republic. Secure the well-being of the people of the Republic. Secondly, provide effective, transparent, accountable, and coherent government for the Republic as a whole. Remember what Mandela said about transparent and accountable government. He was echoing this constitution. Indeed, he said that statement in 1996, the same year this constitution was adopted. The government must be loyal to the Constitution, loyal to the Republic, and loyal to its people. We go further and say Chapter 10 is quite instructive of the values, principles, and ethical standards of the public administration in our constitutional dispensation. Likewise, there may be legal and constitutional questions about the manner that Parliament has conducted itself. All these revolve around the continued constitutional legitimacy of government beyond the moral legitimacy that we are seriously questioning at this time. We urge the African National Congress, as the governing party, to examine itself and mend the ways of government before we reach a point of no return. For this has implications for the ANC in government, it has implications for its leadership, it has implications for its members. We appeal to the civil servants in government to note and remember that whereas governments come and go with elections, they, as civil servants, are part of the permanent state system of the citizenry and the instrumentation of the public good envisioned in our constitutional dispensation. Therefore, they cannot undermine governance. Ours at this point is to facilitate the availability of what we have seen. For as Stanley Henkeman of the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation has said, you cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot unsee what you have seen. We have seen. And all were saying, let's all see. We invite all to see what we have seen in the knowledge that it can never be unseen. When next week, I imagine, the much larger full expanse of the researchers' work, which is beyond what we are dealing with as churches, but which we have found very much important for the opening of eyes. When that comes out, you will perhaps understand better and be able to also ask some questions of the researchers. But we still invite you all to see what we have seen, because we believe you cannot unsee what we have seen. The prophet Amos is today addressing our nation when he says, how you hate honest judges, how you despise people who tell the truth. You trample the poor, stealing their grain through taxes and unfair rent. Therefore, though you build beautiful stone houses, you will never live in them. Though you plant lush vineyards, you will never drink wine from them. For I know the vast number of your sins and the depth of your rebellions. You oppress good people by taking bribes and deprive the poor of justice in the courts. So those who are smart keep their mouths shut, like those people that did not want their stories to be told. For it is an evil time, says Amos. We pray and hope that no one must shut their mouths. The SACC's Unburdening panel remains open for business. Tell about all the corruption and the stealing of public resources. Yes, from the days of the 1994 transition, let us know what is there so we can together create the environment to heal the nation. Thank you for your time.
That is the report that has been presented by the General Secretary. We may take questions of clarity, if any. Otherwise, we conclude. Yes. The journalists are allowed to ask the questions, and you'll be noting. Is there a hand there? 1, 2. Oh, are you up? All right. That's the first question, and then 1, 2.
My name is Unburdening. I come from ENCA. Much of what Bishop Umlwana has said is public knowledge. Perhaps the question to ask would be, with the information that has been given to the Unburdening panel, what systems will be used to test the veracity of that information that has been given, because the experience has shown that much of it gets disputed what the Council of Churches has said is a system of a truth and reconciliation commission of sorts, in that people may possibly get amnesty. I just want clarity on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Let's take those two hands and then respond.
Thank you very much. My name is Patrick Harris. I'm from News 24. Continuing from what the colleague asked. One, there's a question you asked about the integrity of the candidate. And you basically leave it to the lawyers about whether candidate is still protecting the sovereignty of this country. Would you say that those that are still in the cabinet that are disagreeing with President Jacob Zuma, the likes of Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and other ministers, should therefore resign from the cabinet because it lacks legitimacy? My second question is, what is the legal action, if any, that you are going to take? And I think a lot of South Africans have heard a lot of what has been said now. I think we just need clarity on the next step going forward beyond the prayers that have been mentioned. Thank you.
Last question.
My first question is on, obviously we know some people have already gone to the public protector to provide information about the state capture or this alleged influence of the state. Are you able to share with us perhaps the number of people that have come forward with information? Out of the people that have gone to the public protector, are you able to say perhaps there are 10 other people that didn't go to the public protector that have provided us with information that has led to the formulation of this report? And my last question is, you seem to make a case that government has lost its moral legitimacy. And again, the question that my colleague asked, that you leave a question that does the conduct of government render it to have violated its constitutional mandate? Have you completely lost confidence in government?
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, as a last question, you referred the matter to the ANC, but so
Just come again, start all over.
I'll say my last question is that you have reported this to the ANC, and if you look at past actions, the ANC hasn't really taken any action. Why are you leaving again to the party, or what action would you like to see today?
All right. Thank you. Let's take those and respond to those. We'll come back and have, is it short?
My name is Joanna.
Just hold on. Hold on. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Joanna Nkosi. I'm from the South African Women's Collective. I'm here today with a few of my comrades in the collective. We're very interested in what you have presented here today. Part of our mission in the collective is to reach out across the length and breadth of South Africa and work with our people to help them understand civic issues. And this is a penultimate civic issue. We believe that these issues must be communicated not just in English, but in the languages of our country. We would like to know what the SACC is going to do to make this information available in all of the languages and in a way that is understandable by the common person who can speak.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. General Secretary, thank you, sir.
The first question had to do with testing the veracity of information gathered. The decision of the SACC to do a See Judge Act approach with our work was so that we can minimize the prospect of being misguided in our action in terms of what we get to know. And that's why we will partner with the HSRC, those types of research institutions and universities. In this case, the pool of researchers come from different universities. And there are scholars who do this on and on, where to find people that do that. When we were looking for information that's being researched for a paper on race relations and reconciliation in South Africa, where did we go? We went to the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, because that's the work they do. And we, like all scholars who are worth their salt, they always want to make sure that they can, because their whole identity as academics stands on the veracity of their research. But of course, because some of these matters are matters that might have court implications, there will always be somebody who will say it's not true, and I don't know that we can get past that. But we've tried to satisfy ourselves that there's integrity in the research. And the purpose of this report, this is a report to the church public, because we have a conference upcoming. And this is a process that was established by the heads of churches who want to know that their people have received it. And for that reason, this is coming to the last question. This will be translated in various languages, but also the heads of churches have decided on a pastoral letter that goes to all churches, one pastoral letter from all heads of churches, so that the congregations can read what the heads of churches want them to know, because they have to do their own theological reflection on what they know. I have to repeat that the process is see first. We're just talking see now. Judge is when we apply our lenses of the gospel. Then we say, boom, 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 as far as that is concerned. And then ultimately, here are the appropriate actions that are in sync with what we have judged. Law enforcement, we are not charging anyone. We are not focused on individuals. We are focused on the environment, the context in which we worship, the context in which our people live, the context in which our people fail to live, like the child that died. And so it's more about the environment. And that's why we address ourselves to those who are responsible for the environment, the governing party, because it's within their power to do something about the environment. And so we have no desire to go and charge Dr. Bam for her wrongdoing in this instance, if she did something that we're talking about here. Of course, she hasn't, good old Dr. Bam. But we would then say, what is it in the governmental system that has created the environment for Dr. Bam to do that which is wrongdoing? That's more where our focus is. And suggestion of an amnesty, we are not doing a truth commission, but I don't know who has been whispering to you, but there was a time when the church leaders said, maybe part of the problem is that there is a fear that some people will go to jail if the truth comes out. And that for the sake of a future we can all live in peacefully, there should be a possibility of considering an amnesty where people make a clean breast of things. But we're not there, we've not gone into those instruments. It's got its mistakes, it's got its problems in South Africa as well as elsewhere in the world. So that's not where we are in our conversation. But you talk as though you know that we did have a conversation about this. Yes, we did. We did have a conversation about it. Now, the integrity of cabinet, you could easily ask the question, and I wouldn't like to impugn that cabinet members are not people of integrity. Of course they are. But it is unfortunate that there's so much revelation of what some cabinet ministers are believed to have done, or known to have done, or even suspected of having been appointed in ways that promote wrongdoing. Because that in itself does not only undermine the cabinet and government, it also undermines the whole system of governance. The lawlessness reigns because people just feel, when, for example, when government every time it does everything possible not to comply with a court decision. How? Ubiza uzotini yena pa election. Why must Biza comply with the law? And so it creates an environment. And Tina, we live with people that are always in trouble with the law in our communities. Poor people are always in trouble with the law. And it's not because they are more wrongdoers than other people. It's just that the environment in which they live creates very few options. And so because the border with lawlessness is so close, it just gets very much expanded when those who are big in government seem not to care about the law. So it's not about lack of cabinet, integrity in the cabinet. We wouldn't be saying they must resign. That's not what we're talking about. After all, we're just giving you the C. We have not arrived at an act, which should be the deliberations of conference. And if conference comes to that conclusion, I don't know. Maybe they would or they wouldn't. I don't know. You're asking about the next steps that we're going to take. Remember, it's a See, Judge, Act process. This is simply showing you what we're saying for what it is worth. Maybe we might need to improve the lenses of our glasses to see better. We don't know. Maybe we have not seen well. But whatever its limitations, see what we see. And then let's prayerfully, prayer is not it is not a trivial matter. Praying about these things is not trivializing. It is actually anchoring ourselves in that which enables us to act with integrity, fearlessly, but compassionately. You have to be able to say, I will love you with your mistakes and help you change. So there's nothing vindictive. It is all about saying, how can we build each other into the direction? That is the reason why we address ourselves to the African National Congress. The question has been asked. For two reasons. The first one is that the Bible instructs us that if I have got something that bothers me against Archbishop Mali, I have to go and talk to Archbishop Mali. And if Archbishop Mali throws me away, he doesn't listen, then I'm going to maybe take Bishop Siwa. How? I guess you're cool man of Archbishop Mali, and that he doesn't get what I'm trying to communicate to him. And only when all those efforts have been made do we then go out. Illustration of this. When last year the SACC was disturbed by the judgment of the Constitutional Court against the President on the Ngandla matter, we gathered immediately and said we have to go and talk to the President. And the President of the SACC was dispatched to go and have a private conversation with the President about this matter. That was our request, and it did not happen for reasons I wouldn't go into here. And it was only when that failed that then we addressed ourselves to the second person. Who's the second person? The top six of the ANC. And it only became public, if you care to know, because when we went to Luthuli House, we were very surprised. The house was packed with all kinds of people. And the document we thought we were writing confidentially to the ANC had become public. That's why we had a press conference. There was no intention to go public, because you don't do this without talking to somebody. It is a pastoral concern. We have no intention to embarrass anyone. All we're trying to do is, can we help each other find the right path? And this is the same thing we're trying to do. So we have to go to the African National Congress, because they are responsible for the government at this time. So what Sarah was saying, that this thing that we are saying has implications for the African National Congress in government. And therefore, as an organization, they've got to look at it and act fast. And that's why we wrote to them in April to say this. And we told them that we are going to conference in June. We are in the process of C. We would like to arrive at a time when we come to our act point, there will be a different feeling about what is happening in the country in the light of these things, because they are very urgent issues. There may be a question I've not answered, I don't know. Oh yes, somebody asked me how many people. I'm actually intrigued by this because he's gone. There's somebody in the room.
Yes.
There's somebody in the room who was a youth in a group I was chaplain to in Cape Town of what was called young Christian students in the mid-80s. And in those days, there used to be a lot of necklacing on Fridays between Nyanga and Guguletu and Crossroads. And the necklacing was happening, it turned out, because when people go on Friday, come home, they've got money in their pockets. So all I have to say is, give me 100 rand. And if you don't give me 100 rand, and I say, impi, impi, and you start running and everybody chases you and you get necklaced, and that's it. You can't defend yourself once you start running. And so we then had our Sea Judge Act there, and these young people volunteered to be the sentries in different parts of that border area. There would be 2 or 3. There were homes that had agreed to become the post office. You run in, they use their phone, and Mambanjo's house, that's the grandmother of my grandchildren, became like a police station because the phones were coming into the house, and then we'd have 2 or 3 cars that are dispatched to rush in. And what we did was to then get there, hopefully in good time, to stop the people from being necklaced. We saved between 30 and 35 people in that environment. Now, what I'm saying, I find this intriguing, is that actually this is about the same number of people that have talked to us who do not want to come to any public space. And I'm saying, it seems to be history is repeating itself, because we are also at the same time dealing with things that, because you have to then go to these families and minister to them in the same environment. The number that I know that there are some that have actually spoken to this pastor, others have spoken to other pastors. In fact, what we did at the time was to encourage in various localities to people to go to their ministers. The cases that I got to know of in other provinces, I got them because people went to their ministers in those places, including the one who was running a preschool and had applied for a grant for 3 years. And when they had not received one, the day they received it was the value of 3 years' value of grant. And they celebrated, oh, the government is so charitable. They knew that we've been waiting for 3 years. Yeah, we've got the money. The next day, a call comes and says there was a mistake. 2/3 of that money shouldn't have come. It's a mistake. You must bring it back. Here's an account to send it to. It's not the government account. And so the person says, what am I supposed to do now? If I tell, I'll be blacklisted. If I don't tell, I don't know if they'll be knocking at my door someday. I said, use the money and keep rigorous accounting for every penny used. And if anybody ever comes at your door looking for it, then you'll know who the thief is. The thief never came.
All right. Let's take 3 more, and I think we're coming to a close. Can I take that hand first? Is that a follow-up question? Okay, let's take the follow-up question, and then we'll take the 2 hands. All right. Ma'am?
With regard to the illicit flows out of the country, can you give us an idea of what the quantum of the amount we will need in a certain period
Just hold on. Don't disturb the General Secretary is listening, please. Yes, the outflows, and then the second question.
With regard to fiscal sovereignty and guarantees, surely this is not, it doesn't affect anybody in particular, I know that you go for individuals, but have you considered what could be done to arrest those kind of processes in the interest of taxpayers and your confidence?
Yes, yes.
Tony again from ENCA. I know that the church is saying you're not in the business of trying to embarrass anyone here, but the question I'd like to put forward, Bishop, is based on what you have received as evidence, would you conclude that the head of state of this country is corrupt? That's one. And two, based on the repurposing of state-owned companies, are there certain names or what you would refer to as serial offenders that keep coming up in terms of wanting to repurpose them for private consumption? Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Just two questions. Again, the whole issue about legality. This is South Africa, the country of laws and statutes, and you did mention that when you were doing these confessions or taking down these confessions, you made the point that you get lawyers to take them down and so on. So how come that you don't address yourselves to legality? Who has broken which law? If you get an evidence, why can't you take it to the police? Why can't you yourselves as the church take it to the police or encourage people to go and present it to the police? Also, on the issue again of illicit flows and flows, you've got evidence of illicit flows, which is an illegal thing. Why aren't you taking it to the police? And lastly, just the last question. The Reverend mentioned that he was summoned by the private protector. Having heard that you had information that was relevant to state measures and so on, but you declined to cooperate with the protector because what had been told to you in the confessions was misinformation. Is it what you doing here today in the Catholic Church and spilling out the confessions, going against the Spirit? Thank you.
All right. Okay, General Secretary, come and conclude. That's the last page.
We do not yet have a handle around the quantum of illicit outflows. But we can say that it is happening. But we cannot at this point be able to say, remember that we are not the investigators. Our purpose is pastoral. We seek to know the nature of the beast, so to say, so that we can be wiser in our ministry to the environment of the beast. That is our primary purpose. But I expect that maybe not so long from now, the researchers will be able to find, because they are doing more of that, we're not. As I said at the beginning, we took from what's available what is most pressing for our purposes. And of course, we could only work with what has been concluded. What's not been concluded, we can't work with. And the illicit outflows is one of those areas that have not been concluded. The question on the people associated with guarantees, and obviously guarantees are in government. One of the things that, we may consider further because some of this information is only with government. And to the extent that we have a transparent society in an open environment, you should be able to get answers from government on questions. That's one of the things we could do if we needed to deepen our seeing. The question of serial offenders, they indeed are serial offenders, because you can trace that. You know, because we read these things in the newspapers, when you read this today, you never make the connection with what you're going to read 2 days later. It is only when they're all put together in one place you actually say, oh, babe, this looks like actually, this is a logical follow through from this one. Oh, that actually, oh yes, this was preceding this. It had to happen in order for this to happen. Now, you don't do that by just reading your daily newspaper or even your Sunday newspaper or looking at your television screen for that 3 minutes that they spend. But when research is done, everything is put together, you throw them up, and the bones just look in the various directions. Then you say, you know how to read the bones, then you can tell that this is a plan. And it might look chaotic, but it's actually a design. And so in that design, there will be actors that you'll find all the time. And depending on, remember that they always walk very close, just push the envelope. You know, it's kind of like, it's almost illegal, but not quite. Yes, you could say, yes, you wouldn't say. There's, you know how it is with courts, there's a big debate. So I'm saying that there are companies, yes, there are. Sometimes I was saying to my leaders the other day that it's kind of like if you are a rugby player and you've got the defense in front of you, they are going to take the ball away from you. You do, they call punting, you kick the ball over their heads and you're going to rush ahead and get it before they get to it. Some people do that and they move from one company to another. And so while you're focused on this company, they've gone. The next thing is about why we don't therefore take people to court or to the police. That's not really the core business of the South African Council of Churches. We spend our time spending in court every day about everyone that causes troubles in our country. No, we can't. We're dealing with the system. And that's why I was saying that the governmental system must function in an appropriate way. We're not dealing with every offender in the country as an individual. We cannot do that. We've got a police force that should do it. Even that police force will need the evidence. The people who are talking to are not willing even to talk to our lawyers. They're not going to talk to the police because they say, if I open my mouth to anybody else, they will know it is me. Because they know it is me, then I'm in trouble. And these are vulnerable people. So we cannot make them do that. No, we will go to the police on their behalf because they'll have to come and give evidence. The matter of whether the president is corrupt or not, let's just say the jury is out.
All right, that comes to the end of this session. As the General Secretary has said, that there's still lots of work to be done, and it will go to the conference in the first week of June. Let us now stand and close. We ask, O Lord, that you protect those who remain honest, who continue to be obedient to the building of the post-1994 South African dream. Make it real. Grant us traveling mercies as we go back. Continue to grant us wisdom to process what we see and help us to come to a clear judgment and actions that will turn the tide around. For we ask it in the name of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Travel safely.
The Law Society has slammed notices sent to 4 universities to jack up standards or risk losing their LLB courses. The Council on Higher Education issued a stern warning to the universities to conform within 6 months.
I think it will affect the university. I think outside the law faculty, there's a funding issue.
It's been 112 years since Enoch Sontonga died as a relatively unknown composer, choir master and teacher. But today his legacy lives on through his greatest composition, Nkosi Sikeleli Afrika.
For all your news updates, stay tuned to Your World from Monday to Sunday.
Do you support the calls made by Blade Nzimande and Solly Mapaila?
It is not a call by Comrade Solly Mapaila and the Comrade Blade Nzimande. It is the position of the party.
Yes.
And the position of the party, we support it unambiguously.
Why?
The theory of the revolution, in simple terms, was that revolutionary forces are going to take charge of the state. And having taken charge of the state, they are going to transform the state to eventually transform society.
Join me in Port Sedu live every Monday to Thursday.